Did you know that this fierce war that has been ongoing for more than 2 years between Russia and Ukraine could have ended within a week if not for this weapon? A third-generation anti-tank weapon that halted the Russian army's advance towards Kyiv and thwarted the attack. What is the Javelin? How did this weapon manage to deter the world's second strongest army? How did it turn armored tanks with thick armor into moving coffins, to the point where soldiers preferred walking rather than riding in a tank and becoming prey to this weapon? What is the difference between the Javelin and other anti-tank weapons like the Yasin, RPG, TOW, and Kornet? And what are the generations of anti-tank weapons throughout history? What system did the Russians and Ukrainians develop to counter tanks that was even better than the Javelin? We'll go over everything about the Javelin tank buster, its range, price, usage, and even which Arab countries own it and how many Javelins are currently in Saudi Arabia. In mid-2021, Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to amass troops on the border with Ukraine as part of his plan to invade Ukraine and capture its capital, Kyiv. Due to Ukraine's desire and planning to join a European-American military alliance called NATO. This meant that American and European forces would be close to the Russian border, which posed a threat requiring immediate action. By early 2022, the buildup was complete with 70,000 soldiers and 7,000 vehicles moving towards the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, supported by air and artillery forces. Within a few weeks, this attack failed disastrously, with the Russian forces suffering losses in the hundreds and thousands of vehicles, all due to a powerful weapon provided by the Americans to the Ukrainians, 8,500 Javelin units. What is the Javelin? The literal translation of Javelin is spear, but the Ukrainians gave it many names. They call it Saint Javelin, painting an entire building with an image of a saint holding the missile, and stickers with this saint carrying the weapon were spread everywhere. It became known as Saint Javelin, the Tank Butcher, and the Savior of Kyiv. This weapon is a third-generation anti-tank system. So what are the first and second generations? The first generation consists of standard RPG missiles like the Yasin missile. It's a missile that travels directly without any guidance, firing like a bullet, and there are several types of it with various warheads. The second generation of anti-tank missiles are guided missiles. Once launched, you can control them. How do you control them? By a wire. Yes, a wire and reel are attached to the launch platform in the missile, allowing you to maneuver it like a Sony PlayStation game and hit your target even if it moves. This is the second generation, like the TOW and Kornet, among other anti-tank systems. However, the third generation, unlike the previous systems, relies on more advanced technology, utilizing imaging and infrared sensors and guiding the missile without wires and without any guidance from the user or missile launcher. Fire and forget. So, what is the Javelin? Like any anti-tank missile, the Javelin consists of two main parts, the launch platform and the missile. The launch platform features a fantastic, powerful, and advanced technology, thermal cameras or radar that detects targets. Whether it's day or night, the tank is clear. Whether it's camouflaged or not, its heat is detected. The launch platform is also used as a surveillance unit. You wear the goggles, monitor, and observe. Therefore, the launch platform is highly advanced and includes a daytime system without the thermal or detailed features if you're using it during the day. We've covered the launch platform, so let's look at the missile. The missile consists of two engines and two explosive warheads. Why two engines? Notice the Javelin's launch sequence. The first stage fires, then it drops slightly before firing upwards. Why? Because of the two engines, which enable the user to launch the missile in tight and enclosed spaces. How? If you launch a missile today in a confined space with a wall behind you and people around, you and those nearby would be severely affected by the launch. Therefore, the Javelin is designed for smooth, flexible, and comfortable launches. with the first engine firing, then the second to propel it towards its target. Its range is approximately 2.5 kilometers when handheld, but if mounted on a vehicle, its range can extend up to 5 kilometers. So, you mentioned 2 explosive warheads. Why are there 2? The tandem warhead consists of 2 parts, a front warhead and a rear warhead. The first warhead deals with reactive armor, the kind of armor that responds to an impact with a counter-explosion, ERA armor. These are the square blocks you see on top of tanks. This is the first warhead, while the second one is used to penetrate the tank. But that's not all. The Javelin has a terrifying feature known as target lock. When you're aiming and you see the tank, you can lock onto the target, and this technology enables the computer to recognize and capture the target's shape, then launch the missile. You can choose between 2 options, either hit it directly or strike from above. Hitting the tank from above is a deadly strike because the armor on the turret is usually weaker than the sides. This makes the Javelin extremely dangerous and terrifying, especially against Russian tanks. The missile rises 150 meters into the air and then strikes the tank's turret. This is why, when many tanks explode, especially since it hits the ammunition storage inside the tank, you often see the turret blown off and landing far from the tank. There are many videos showing the power of this explosion and how lethal the Javelin is against Russian tanks. This technology has made the Javelin capable of destruction with a 90% hit rate. Of course, the fire and forget feature we discussed earlier allows you to lock onto the target, and once that's done, the missile independently tracks the target whether it moves, lowers, or retreats. This feature allows an anti-tank unit to fire and then hide, or fire and target another objective. Once you've launched the missile, you can prepare the next one and fire, or if you fired, you can escape, because usually in tank attack tactics, one tank moves while another covers it. So if the covering tank sees an attack, it will target you directly. Thus, if you fired and forgotten, you can take cover or retreat to a safe spot. Additionally, in tank armor systems like the trophy system and others, there's a countermeasure missile that intercepts your missile so you may not even benefit from the Javelin if it doesn't hit correctly. If the attack comes from above, there are usually no systems to counter it from above, but there's a high chance that it won't strike at a 90-degree angle, so it might get intercepted. That's why there are tactics for using the Javelin to fire 2 missiles simultaneously. The first one triggers the defense, and the second one hits, bypassing the trophy system and active defense systems, not the reactive ones like those on the sides, but the active ones that launch a missile or countermeasure against your launched missile. This deadly missile and its advanced technology have 2 major drawbacks that limit its spread and use. The first downside is its high weight. It weighs around 30 kilograms. If you're carrying it, 30 or 27 kilograms is quite a load to move with, which is a challenge, but it's manageable. The second drawback is its cost. It costs up to $250,000. So if someone is attacking you, would you fire a $250,000 missile at them? $250,000 limits the spread of this missile. Also, its production isn't easy. It requires large manufacturing units, and only 50,000 pieces have been made, 10,000 of which went to Ukraine at the start of the war. I'm not sure if the remaining units have been used up or not. Thermal imaging, infrared tracking devices, and the engines are very complex, which is a drawback that limits its spread. Sometimes the Russians say, let's just exhaust their javelins, and what the Russians do is this. They brought out tanks from World War II, let them go, blow up the first, second, third. The Russians don't care how many soldiers die, they deal with lives as numbers. That's why they have saturation attacks, and one of their tactics is to flood an area. When they invade a city, they must clear it first, then move in. Saturation attacks. These 2 tactics have been used by the Russians to exhaust the Americans and NATO, making them use up their javelins. However, the loss of Russian tank command teams early in the war has affected them until now. You lose a tank, and you lose those inside it. A significant portion of the soldiers trained to drive tanks were lost due to these missiles. As necessity is the mother of invention, the Russians and Ukrainians developed a new, very cheap, easy-to-use technique to target tanks. It can produce hundreds of thousands at the lowest possible cost, maneuver wherever needed, has a higher range, is stealthy, and when you use it, it's not detected until it hits. These are the suicide drones. Suicide drones are the future, making the Javelin part of history. Today, suicide drones have become a deadly weapon against vehicles, capable of overcoming all the shortcomings and flaws found in the Javelin, leading to a decrease in Javelin use and supply. The focus has now shifted entirely to suicide drones. Suicide drones are a vast topic with many technologies, complexities, and features that can be applied. What is the result today after the Javelin and drones? According to American defense officials, the Russians have lost half of their tank and vehicle arsenal as a result of this war, which is a significant loss. We're talking about the world's second strongest army, which relies heavily on tanks. So losing half of their vehicles is a major success for NATO or the weaponry used against these tanks. Now, let's go back to the question I asked at the beginning about which Arab countries own the Javelin. Many Arab countries have it. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, but some have more units than others. According to Wikipedia, the country that owns the most today is Qatar and Saudi Arabia, followed by the United Arab Emirates, though the exact number isn't disclosed. I couldn't find the number for them either. Morocco was also reported to have signed a contract to acquire the Javelin, but the numbers weren't disclosed either, nor were they for Jordan. Of course, the choice of this weapon depends on the threat surrounding you and the previous armaments you have.